Marcus Thompson drove his old pickup truck slowly down Pine Valley Drive. His wife Sarah sat next to him in the passenger seat. She held a folder full of house papers in her hands. Both of them looked out the windows at the perfect houses on both sides of the street. "This is it," Sarah said softly. She pointed to a blue house with white trim. "Number 247. Marcus pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. For a moment, they just sat there looking at their new home. The grass was green and cut very short. The flowers by the front door were planted in straight rows. Even the mailbox looked like it had been painted yesterday. "It's perfect," Sarah whispered. Marcus nodded but said nothing. After 2 long tours in Afghanistan, he had learned to look carefully at new places. This neighborhood felt different from anywhere he had lived before. Every house looked almost the same. Every lawn was perfect. Every car was clean and new. They got out of the truck and walked to the front door. Marcus carried their suitcases while Sarah fumbled with the new keys. The door opened with a soft click. Inside, the house smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. Sunlight came through clean windows and made everything bright. Sarah walked from room to room, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. "Look at this kitchen," she called out. "And the bathroom has a big tub. We could put a crib in the back bedroom someday." Marcus smiled. Sarah had been talking about having children since they got married 3 years ago. But first he had to finish his time in the army. Then they had to find jobs and save money. Now finally, they had a real home where they could start a family. He walked out to the backyard and stood on the small deck. The yard was not very big, but it had good soil and got plenty of sun. He could already picture Sarah planting a vegetable garden. Maybe he would build a small shed for his tools. The backyard connected to other backyards with low fences between them. He could see into his neighbors' yards. One had a swimming pool. Another had a play set for children. An older man was watering his flower beds with a green hose. The man noticed Marcus watching and waved. Marcus waved back. Later that day, a moving truck arrived with their furniture and boxes. Marcus had learned to pack light during his army years. They did not own much, but everything they had was important to them. Sarah's nursing uniforms hung in the bedroom closet. Marcus's army medal sat in a small box on the dresser. Their wedding photos went on the kitchen table. Slowly, the empty house began to feel like home. On their 3rd day, Sarah came home from her new job at the hospital with a big smile on her face. "The other nurses are so nice," she said. "And Dr. Martinez said I'm doing great work already. I think I'm really going to like it here." Marcus had started his new job too. He worked at a company that fixed heating and air conditioning systems. The pay was good, and his boss was a veteran who understood what it was like to come back from war. That evening, they sat on their front steps and watched the sun go down. Children rode bicycles on the sidewalk. Neighbors walked their dogs. A few people waved and said hello. "This is what I dreamed about," Marcus said quietly. "When I was overseas sleeping in tents and listening to bombs go off, I thought about sitting on our own front steps just like this." Sarah took his hand. "No more worrying about you getting hurt. No more long months apart. Just us in our own house in a safe place." The next morning, Marcus found an envelope in their mailbox. It was from the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. Inside were papers welcoming them to the neighborhood. There were also rules about what they could and could not do with their house. Marcus read through the rules while drinking his coffee. Most of them made sense. Keep your grass cut. Don't play loud music late at night. Don't park broken cars in your driveway. "Listen to this," he said to Sarah. "No clotheslines visible from the street. All garbage cans must be stored out of sight except on pickup days. No vehicles over 6,000 pounds in driveways overnight." Sarah looked up from her breakfast. "That's pretty detailed." Marcus kept reading. "House colors must be approved by the architectural committee. No signs in yards except for sale signs. No business activities in homes." "Well, I guess they just want to keep the neighborhood looking nice," Sarah said. "That's why we picked this place, right? Because everything looks so good here." Marcus folded the papers and put them back in the envelope. As a soldier, he was used to following rules. These HOA rules seemed a little picky, but he could live with them. After all, they had finally found their perfect home. He had no idea that these innocent-looking papers would soon turn his dream into a nightmare. 3 weeks after moving in, Marcus found another envelope from the HOA in his mailbox. This one was different. The paper was yellow instead of white. Big red letters at the top said violation notice. Marcus opened it while standing by the mailbox. His pickup truck was the problem. The letter said his vehicle was commercial in appearance and not suitable for a residential neighborhood. He had 72 hours to remove it from his driveway or face a $50 fine. Marcus looked at his truck. It was a regular Ford pickup, dark blue and about 5 years old. He used it to get to work and to carry his tools. There was nothing commercial about it except that it was useful. He walked back to the house and showed the letter to Sarah. "But it's just a pickup truck," she said. "Half the people in Texas drive pickup trucks." "That's what I thought too," Marcus said. That evening, Marcus drove around the neighborhood and counted vehicles. He found 6 other pickup trucks parked in driveways. Some were bigger and older than his. One even had a company name painted on the side. The next morning, Marcus called the HOA office. A woman with a sharp voice answered. "This is Janet Whitmore, HOA president. How can I help you?" "I got a violation notice about my pickup truck," Marcus said. "But there are other trucks in the neighborhood that haven't gotten notices." "Each case is reviewed individually," Janet said. "Your truck has been determined to be inappropriate for our community standards." "What makes it inappropriate?" "The decision has been made. You need to comply with the notice." "Can I appeal this decision?" There was a long pause. "You can request a hearing, but I doubt it will change anything. The board takes these matters very seriously." Marcus hung up the phone feeling frustrated. In the Army, when someone made a decision, they had to explain their reasons. Here it seemed like the HOA could do whatever they wanted. He moved his truck to the street for now and parked Sarah's small car in the driveway. But 3 days later, another yellow envelope appeared. This time, the violation was about their garbage cans. Marcus had put them out for pickup on Tuesday morning, just like the garbage truck schedule said. But the letter claimed he had put them out too early. The rule said garbage cans could only be placed at the curb after 6 p.m. the night before pickup day. Marcus checked his watch when he had put out the cans. It was 6:15 a.m. on Tuesday. The garbage truck came at 8:30 a.m. His cans were only at the curb for 2 hours and 15 minutes. "This is crazy," Sarah said when she read the notice. "Who sits around timing when people put out their garbage cans?" The fine was $50. Marcus decided to pay it rather than fight it. He hoped that would be the end of their problems. He was wrong. 2 weeks later, another violation notice arrived. This one was about the small American flag Marcus had hung from their front porch. The notice said flags could only be displayed on national holidays, and only with prior written approval from the architectural committee. Marcus stared at the letter in disbelief. He had served 2 tours overseas defending the country that flag represented. Now some neighborhood committee was telling him he could not display it at his own home. This time he decided to fight back. He drove to the HOA office, which was located in a small building near the neighborhood entrance. Janet Whitmore was a thin woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back tight. She wore a business suit even though she was retired. Her desk was covered with folders and papers. A sign on her desk said, "Rules are not suggestions." "Mr. Thompson," she said without looking up. "I assume you're here about the flag violation." "Yes, ma'am. I don't understand why I can't fly an American flag at my own home. The rules are very clear. Flags must be approved in advance. We can't have people putting up any kind of flag they want. It's the American flag. I served in the Army for 8 years. Janet finally looked up at him. Her eyes were cold. "Your military service doesn't give you special privileges to ignore HOA rules. Everyone must follow the same guidelines. Can I apply for approval to display the flag?" "You can submit a written request to the architectural committee. They meet once a month. The next meeting is in 3 weeks. Marcus left the office angry but trying to stay calm. He wrote the letter requesting permission to display the American flag. He included copies of his military service records and explained why the flag was important to him. 3 weeks later, the committee denied his request. The reason given was potential for setting unwanted precedent regarding flag displays. That same week, Sarah got her first violation notice. She had planted flowers along their front walkway. The flowers were beautiful yellow marigolds that she had chosen carefully, but the letter said the flower bed extended 2 inches beyond the approved landscaping boundary. 2 inches? Sarah said, holding a ruler against the flower bed. How did they even measure this? Marcus knelt down and looked closely at the flowers. Sarah was right. Maybe 2 inches of the flower bed crossed over some invisible line that existed only on HOA maps. "We can move them," Sarah said quietly. "It's not worth fighting about." But Marcus was getting tired of moving and changing and paying fines for things that hurt nobody. Every week brought a new envelope with a new complaint. The grass was half an inch too tall. A small oil stain appeared on the driveway. Sarah's car was parked 6 inches too close to the property line. Each violation came with a $50 fine. Each time Marcus tried to discuss it with Janet Whitmore, she treated him like he was a troublemaker who just did not understand how civilized neighborhoods worked. "Maybe we should just sell the house and move somewhere else," Sarah said one evening after their 4th violation notice arrived. Marcus looked around their living room. Sarah had made it beautiful with plants and pictures and soft lighting. This was supposed to be their dream home. They had saved money for years to afford it. "No," he said firmly. "We're not running away. This is our home now." But late that night, as he lay awake listening to Sarah sleep, Marcus wondered what they had gotten themselves into. The perfect neighborhood was starting to feel like a prison with very expensive guards. By their 3rd month in Willowbrook Estates, Marcus and Sarah had received 12 violation notices. The fines added up to $600. Marcus had paid all of them, hoping the harassment would stop. Instead, it got worse. Craig Sullivan joined Janet Whitmore in making their lives difficult. Craig owned a small construction company and served on the HOA board. He was a big man with thick arms and an angry face. He drove an expensive white truck that was twice the size of Marcus's pickup, but somehow his truck was never considered commercial. Craig made it clear he did not like Marcus from their first meeting. It happened on a Saturday morning when Marcus was washing his car in the driveway. "You the new guy?" Craig asked, walking over from across the street. "Yes, sir. Marcus Thompson." Marcus held out his hand to shake. Craig looked at the hand but did not shake it. "Heard you've been causing trouble for Janet, questioning the rules and all." "Just trying to understand them," Marcus said calmly. "Well, let me help you understand something," Craig said, stepping closer. "This is a nice neighborhood. We work hard to keep it that way. People who don't want to follow the rules should find somewhere else to live." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "I follow the rules. Every single one of them. Do you now?" Craig smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "We'll see about that." The next week, the violations became daily events. Marcus would come home from work to find yellow envelopes stuck in his door or tucked under his windshield wipers. Monday, trash can lid was open 2 inches, attracting insects. Tuesday, garden hose left visible from the street. Wednesday, newspaper not collected from driveway within 4 hours of delivery. Thursday, car parked in driveway at improper angle. Friday, mailbox post needs repainting. Each violation came with a $50 fine. Marcus started taking pictures of everything around his house every morning before work. When he got violations, his photos proved the accusations were false. But when he brought the evidence to Janet Whitmore, she dismissed it. "Our inspectors are trained professionals," she would say. "We don't make mistakes." Marcus realized that someone was watching their house constantly, looking for any excuse to write a violation. He started watching back on Tuesday morning. He saw Craig Sullivan's white truck parked at the end of the street at 6 a.m. Craig sat in the driver's seat with a clipboard, watching Marcus's house. On Wednesday, Marcus noticed a woman with short red hair walking past their house 3 times between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. Each time, she stopped and wrote something on a piece of paper. On Thursday, Marcus took the day off work and sat by his front window. At 10 a.m., the red-haired woman came back. This time she walked right up to their front door and looked closely at the paint around the door frame. She wrote something down, then walked to the mailbox and examined it carefully. Marcus opened the front door. "Can I help you with something?" The woman jumped back, startled. "Oh, I'm just conducting routine inspections for the HOA. What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Lisa Chen. I'm the compliance officer." Marcus had never heard of a compliance officer before. "Do you have some kind of badge or identification?" Lisa's face turned red. "I don't need to show you anything. This is official HOA business." She walked away quickly, but not before giving Marcus's house one more long look. That afternoon, Marcus received 2 violation notices. One claimed his front door had a scuff mark that needed to be repaired. The other said his mailbox was leaning slightly to the left. Marcus looked at his front door and mailbox carefully. Both were in perfect condition. He decided to do some research. That evening, he went online and read everything he could find about HOA laws in Texas. What he learned made him angry. HOAs could make rules, but they had to follow their own rules fairly. They could not target specific homeowners. They had to give people a chance to defend themselves before imposing fines, and all their meetings had to be open to homeowners. Marcus also learned that in Texas, HOAs could not prevent people from displaying the American flag. There was a state law protecting that right. The next morning, Marcus called the HOA office and demanded copies of all their rules and meeting minutes. Janet Whitmore said it would take 2 weeks to gather the information. Texas law says you have to provide those documents within 3 business days, Marcus told her. How do you know about Texas law? Janet asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. I've been reading. There was a long silence. We'll get you the documents when we can. Marcus hired a lawyer named David Rodriguez. David had handled HOA disputes before. He looked over all of Marcus's violation notices and shook his head. This is harassment, David said. Pure and simple. They're making up violations to force you out of the neighborhood. Can we stop them? We can file complaints with the state. We can demand they follow their own rules. But it's going to take time, and it might get worse before it gets better. Meanwhile, Sarah was struggling. The constant stress of violation notices was making her sick. She had trouble sleeping and lost weight. Some mornings she was too anxious to go to work. I hate coming home, she told Marcus one evening. I'm scared to check the mailbox. I'm afraid to plant flowers or wash my car or do anything that might give them another excuse to fine us. Marcus held his wife and felt his anger growing. Sarah was the kindest person he knew. She worked long shifts at the hospital helping sick people. She did not deserve this harassment. That weekend, Marcus decided to attend his first HOA board meeting. The meetings were held once a month in the community center. According to the rules, all homeowners were supposed to be welcome. When Marcus walked into the meeting room, the conversation stopped. Janet Whitmore sat at the front table with 4 other board members, including Craig Sullivan. About 20 other homeowners sat in folding chairs facing the board. We weren't expecting any new attendees tonight, Janet said coldly. According to your rules, meetings are open to all homeowners, Marcus replied. He took a seat in the back row. The meeting was unlike anything Marcus had seen before. The board members talked mostly to each other, ignoring the homeowners completely. When someone tried to ask a question, Janet would cut them off or say it was not the right time for questions. Craig Sullivan gave a report on neighborhood compliance issues. He talked about homeowners who were not following the rules properly. He never mentioned names, but Marcus knew Craig was talking about him. Some residents seem to think the rules don't apply to them, Craig said, looking straight at Marcus. They need to understand that we take violations very seriously in this community. After the meeting, an older man approached Marcus in the parking lot. You're the new guy on Pine Valley Drive, right? The man asked. I'm Bill Henderson. I live on Oak Street. They shook hands. Bill looked around to make sure no one was listening, then spoke quietly. They did the same thing to us when we first moved here, he said. Constant violations, ridiculous fines. My wife cried every day for 2 months. What did you do? We gave up, Bill said sadly. Started following every single rule exactly, no matter how stupid. Eventually they left us alone, but it took almost a year. There have to be other people they've targeted. Oh, there are, but nobody wants to fight them. Janet and Craig have too much power, and most people are afraid. Marcus drove home thinking about what Bill had said. Fear was exactly what the HOA board wanted. They wanted homeowners to be scared, to give up, to follow orders without question. But Marcus had spent 8 years in the Army learning not to give up when faced with bullies. And he was not about to start now. The October HOA meeting was different from the start. Marcus had spent weeks preparing. He brought his lawyer, David Rodriguez, a folder full of documentation and copies of Texas state laws about HOAs. He also brought Sarah, even though she was nervous about confronting the board. I need you there with me, Marcus had told her. We're doing this together. When they walked into the community center meeting room, Marcus saw more homeowners than usual. Word had spread that someone was finally going to challenge the board. Bill Henderson was there, along with several other neighbors. Marcus had never met Janet Whitmore's. Face went white when she saw David Rodriguez carrying his briefcase. We weren't informed that lawyers would be attending, Tonight, she said. According to your own rules, all homeowners can bring representatives to meetings. David replied calmly. He took a seat next to Marcus and Sarah in the front row. The meeting started with Janet reading the usual reports. But when she got to old business, Marcus stood up. I'd like to address the board about selective enforcement of HOA rules, he said. This isn't the time for homeowner comments, Janet snapped. David stood up. Actually, according to Texas Property Code Section 209, homeowners have the right to address the board during official meetings. Craig Sullivan leaned forward in his chair. Who are you to come in here telling us about the law? I'm Mr. Thompson's attorney, and I'm here because your board has been violating both your own rules and state law. Marcus opened his folder and pulled out his first document. Over the past 4 months, my family has received 37 violation notices. During that same period, I have documented over 50 similar violations by other homeowners that received no notices at all. He held up photographs. This is my pickup truck, which you called commercial. This is my neighbor's pickup truck, which has a company logo painted on the side. His truck has never been cited. More photographs. This is my mailbox, which you said was tilting. This is another mailbox 3 houses down that is actually tilting. No violation notice. Marcus's voice stayed calm and steady, but his hands shook slightly with controlled anger. This is my wife's flower bed, which you said extended 2 inches over the property line. This is a flower bed 4 blocks away that extends 2 feet over the property line. No violation. Janet Whitmore's face was getting redder with each example. We review each case individually based on complaints from other residents. Who complained about my flowers? Marcus asked. I'd like to see the written complaints that started these violations. That information is confidential. David Rodriguez opened his briefcase. Actually, under Texas law, HOA enforcement records are supposed to be available to homeowners. We've requested these documents 3 times and haven't received them. Craig Sullivan stood up suddenly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. I don't care what some lawyer says. This is our neighborhood and we'll run it the way we see fit. No, you won't, Marcus said quietly. You'll follow the law or you'll face the consequences. The room went completely silent. Several board members looked uncomfortable. A few homeowners in the audience nodded in agreement with Marcus. Janet Whitmore tried to regain control. This meeting is getting out of hand. We need to move on to other business. Not yet, Marcus said. He pulled out another document. I also want to address the illegal fees you've been charging. Under Texas Property Code Section 209-06, HOA fines cannot exceed $25 per violation per day. He looked directly at Janet. You've been charging $50 per violation. That's illegal, and you've been charging the $50 immediately, without giving homeowners the required notice period to fix the problems. David Rodriguez added, We've also discovered that this board has been holding private meetings to make enforcement decisions. All HOA board meetings must be open to homeowners. Craig Sullivan's face was dark red now. You think you can come in here and tell us how to do our jobs? You think your Army service makes you special? I think the law applies to everyone, Marcus replied, including HOA board members. Janet tried one more time to shut down the discussion. This meeting is over. Everyone needs to leave now, but other homeowners were standing up and speaking. Out. They charged me $100 for having my car parked in my own driveway overnight, said a woman. Marcus didn't recognize they made me cut down a tree that was perfectly healthy, said an elderly man. My kids can't play in our front yard because they're afraid. Someone will report them for making noise, said another. Woman, the meeting dissolved into chaos. Some homeowners were asking questions. Others were sharing their own stories of harassment, and the board members were arguing among themselves. Finally, Janet Whitmore stood up and shouted, This meeting is officially ended. She and the other board members stormed out of the room, but the homeowners stayed. For the first time, they were talking to each other about their experiences with the HOA. Marcus realized that almost every person in the room had a story similar to his. After everyone else left, Marcus, Sarah, and David Rodriguez walked out to the parking lot together. Marcus felt good for the first time in months. Finally, someone had stood up to the board. That went well, David said. You got them rattled. What happens next? Sarah asked. They'll probably try to retaliate, David warned. Bullies don't like being confronted in public. Be prepared for things to get worse before they get better. David was right. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus and Sarah received violation notices almost daily. The accusations became more ridiculous than ever. Their doormat was improperly positioned. Sarah's car was excessively clean, causing glare. Marcus had loitered in his own driveway while getting his mail. But Marcus was no longer intimidated. He photographed every violation notice and sent copies to David Rodriguez. He also started a folder documenting similar violations by other homeowners that went unpunished. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in late October. Marcus was working late and didn't get home until after 9 p.m. Sarah had gone to the grocery store after her shift at the hospital. She was carrying bags of groceries from her car to the front door when Craig Sullivan appeared in the driveway. With him were 2 other board members, Mike Torres, who owned a small contracting business, and Jerry Walsh, who worked as a bank manager. "Sarah Thompson," Craig said loudly. "We need to talk to you about your husband's behavior at the board meeting." Sarah set down her grocery bags. "I was at the meeting too. Marcus didn't do anything wrong. He disrespected the board," Mike Torres said. "He brought a lawyer to intimidate us." "He brought a lawyer because you've been breaking the law," Sarah replied. Her voice was shaking, but she stood her ground. Craig stepped closer to her. "Your husband needs to learn his place in this neighborhood. And so do you." "Our place is in our own home, minding our own business," Sarah said. "No," Craig said, stepping even closer. "Your place is following the rules like everyone else. No special treatment because he was in the army." Sarah tried to walk around him to get to her front door, but Craig moved to block her path. "We're not finished talking," he said. "Yes, we are." Sarah tried to push past him. Craig grabbed her arm. "Nobody walks away from me when I'm talking." Sarah pulled her arm free. "Don't touch me!" But as she stepped backward, Mike Torres moved behind her. She was trapped between the 2 men. "Maybe some respect needs to be taught the hard way," Mike said. Sarah looked around desperately. The street was empty. No neighbors were outside. Marcus was still 20 minutes away from getting home. "Please," she said, "just let me go inside." "Not until you understand something," Craig said. He shoved her backward. Sarah stumbled but didn't fall. "Your husband thinks he's tough because he was a soldier. But this isn't Afghanistan. This is Texas. And in Texas, we handle problems our own way." Sarah tried to run toward the front door, but Jerry Walsh grabbed her shoulder and spun her around. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked. That's when Mike Torres hit her. His fist caught her in the face, right below her left eye. Sarah's head snapped back and she fell to the ground. Blood started flowing from her nose. The 3 men stood over her for a moment. Sarah was too shocked and hurt to move. "Tell your husband that was just a warning," Craig said. "Next time it'll be worse." They walked away, leaving Sarah bleeding on her own driveway. She managed to crawl to the front door and unlock it. Once inside, she called 911 with shaking hands. Then she called Marcus. "Sarah?" He answered on the first ring. "I'm almost home." "Marcus," she whispered. "Something terrible happened. Come home now." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Marcus's voice came back, cold and deadly calm. "I'm on my way." Marcus found Sarah in the emergency room at Memorial Hospital. Her left eye was swollen shut and turning purple. Her nose was broken and had required surgery to repair. The doctor said she was lucky the break wasn't worse. Marcus sat in the plastic chair next to her hospital bed and held her hand. Sarah was sedated for the pain, drifting in and out of sleep. Every few minutes she would squeeze his hand and whisper, "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" Marcus asked gently. "For not fighting back. For letting them hurt me." Marcus leaned closer to her. "This is not your fault. Do you hear me? This is not your fault at all." But inside, Marcus was fighting a battle with himself. Part of him wanted to drive straight to Craig Sullivan's house and end this the way he might have handled it in Afghanistan. That part of him knew exactly how to make 3 men disappear permanently. The other part of him knew that was exactly what Craig Sullivan wanted. They had attacked Sarah to make Marcus lose control. If he fought back with violence, they would call the police and have him arrested. Then they would own the neighborhood completely. Detective Maria Santos arrived at the hospital around midnight. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She took Sarah's statement carefully, asking questions about exactly what happened and who said what. "Did you know these men before tonight?" Detective Santos asked. "They're on the HOA board," Sarah said through her swollen lips. "They've been harassing us for months." "Harassing you how?" Marcus pulled out his folder of violation notices. 37 violations in 4 months, all of them either fake or targeting us specifically while ignoring the same problems at other houses. Detective Santos looked through the papers. This does look like a pattern of harassment. But harassment and assault are 2 different crimes. What happens to the men who attacked my wife? Marcus asked. We'll arrest them for assault. With Mrs. Thompson's testimony and the medical evidence, we have a strong case. They'll probably get probation and have to pay medical bills. Probation? Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. First-time offenders, no weapons involved. That's usually how these cases go. After Detective Santos left, Marcus sat alone with his thoughts while Sarah slept. Probation wasn't enough. Medical bills weren't enough. These men had put his wife in the hospital because she dared to stand up to them. They thought they could terrorize anyone who didn't follow their rules. They were wrong. Marcus had learned many things during his 8 years in the Army. How to plan operations. How to gather intelligence. How to identify enemy weaknesses and exploit them. How to win wars without firing a single shot. The HOA board had just declared war on his family. They didn't understand that they were fighting someone who knew how to fight back. Over the next 3 days, while Sarah recovered at home, Marcus began his research. He started with Craig Sullivan. Craig's construction company was called Sullivan Brothers Construction, even though Craig had no brothers. The business was located in a run-down strip mall on the east side of town. Marcus drove by several times, learning the schedule. Craig usually arrived around 8 a.m. and left by 3 p.m. Marcus also discovered that Craig's business had been struggling. There had been complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau. 3 customers had sued Craig for incomplete work. His contractor's license had been renewed late twice in the past 5 years. Most interesting of all, Craig had been cutting corners on his jobs. Marcus found building permits online for Craig's recent projects. Then he drove by those buildings and took pictures. Several had obvious code violations that could only have happened if the city inspector never actually inspected them. Mike Torres was next. His contracting business was slightly more successful than Craig's, but he had his own problems. Marcus discovered that Mike had been using unlicensed subcontractors on several jobs. He had also been pulling building permits for work that was never completed, which suggested he might be using permits as a way to make his business look busier than it actually was. Jerry Walsh seemed cleaner at first. He worked at a respectable bank and lived in a nice house. But Marcus dug deeper. Jerry had been married and divorced 3 times. Each divorce had involved accusations of financial misconduct. Jerry's current wife was 20 years younger than him and had a history of expensive shopping habits. Most importantly, Jerry handled loan approvals at his bank. Marcus spent 2 days watching the bank and writing down license plate numbers of people who met with Jerry. Then, he ran those license plates through online databases he had access to as a veteran. What he found was very interesting. Jerry had approved several loans for people with poor credit histories. Those same people had received unusually favorable treatment from the HOA board. No violations, no fines, even when their houses clearly broke the rules. But Marcus's biggest discovery was about Janet Whitmore herself. The HOA president had been busy enriching herself through the neighborhood association. Every month the HOA hired contractors for various jobs: lawn care, pool maintenance, sidewalk repairs, painting. Marcus got copies of the HOA financial records from homeowners who were friendly to his cause. Then he researched each contractor. 3 of the companies that regularly received HOA contracts were owned by Janet's family members. Her son owned the landscaping company. Her brother-in-law owned the pool maintenance business. Her nephew owned the concrete repair company. Even worse, the HOA was paying these companies far more than market rates. A job that should cost $500 was billed at $1,500. The extra money was pure profit that stayed in Janet's family. Marcus also discovered that Janet had been using her position to insider trade on neighborhood real estate. When the HOA decided to change rules in ways that would hurt property values, Janet would buy houses cheaply before the changes were announced. When the rules were changed back, she would sell the houses for big profits. By the end of the week, Marcus had enough information to destroy all 4 board members. But information was just the first weapon. He needed to plan his attack carefully. Marcus remembered something his commanding officer had told him in Afghanistan. The best victories are won before the enemy knows there's a war. He called his lawyer David Rodriguez and arranged a meeting. David was impressed with Marcus's research but concerned about how he had gathered some of the information. "This is all legal to use," David assured him. "Public records, business filings, court documents." "But Marcus, what exactly are you planning to do with all this?" "I'm going to end their ability to hurt anyone else the way they hurt Sarah. There are legal ways to handle this. We can file complaints with the state attorney general, report the financial irregularities, challenge the HOA in court." "Legal ways take years," Marcus said. "And while we're waiting for the legal system to work, they'll keep targeting other families. No, this ends now." That night, Marcus sat down at his computer and began writing. He wrote letters to the IRS about Craig's tax problems and building code violations. He wrote to the state licensing board about Mike's use of unlicensed subcontractors. He wrote to Jerry's bank about potential loan fraud. He wrote to local newspapers about HOA corruption and included copies of financial records showing how Janet Whitmore had been stealing from homeowners. He wrote to the state attorney general about selective enforcement and illegal meetings. Most importantly, he wrote to every homeowner in Willowbrook Estates. His letter explained exactly what the board had been doing and how they had been breaking both their own rules and state laws. He included copies of documents proving everything he said, but Marcus wasn't finished. These people had put his wife in the hospital. Letters and complaints weren't enough. They needed to understand that actions have consequences, real consequences. Marcus smiled as he sealed the last envelope. The war was about to begin, and the enemy had no idea what was coming for them. Marcus launched his counterattack with the precision of a military operation. He had learned in the army that timing was everything. Hit multiple targets at once, and the enemy couldn't respond effectively to any of them. On Monday morning, Marcus mailed his letters to every homeowner in Willowbrook Estates. The letters contained copies of financial records showing how Janet Whitmore had been stealing HOA money. They included photographs of Craig Sullivan's building code violations and Mike Torres's unlicensed work. They showed how Jerry Walsh had approved questionable loans for his HOA friends. By Tuesday, Marcus's phone was ringing constantly. Angry homeowners wanted to know if the information was true. Several said they had suspected corruption but never had proof. "We need to call for a special meeting to remove the entire board," said Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for 15 years. "I'll start getting signatures for a petition," offered Bill Henderson. Marcus coordinated the homeowners' response carefully. He had learned that an organized attack was always more effective than individual complaints. But while the homeowners organized their revolt, Marcus was executing the more devastating part of his plan. On Tuesday morning, IRS agents arrived at Craig Sullivan's construction business. Marcus had provided them with detailed records of Craig's tax problems, including unreported income and fraudulent deductions. The agents spent 6 hours going through Craig's files. Craig called Janet Whitmore in a panic. "They're seizing my business records. Someone reported me to the IRS." "Who would do that?" Janet asked. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." While Craig was dealing with the IRS, city building inspectors were visiting every job site where his company had done work in the past 2 years. Marcus had provided them with photographs and addresses of code violations. By Wednesday, Craig's contractor's license was suspended pending investigation. 3 of his current jobs were shut down for safety violations. 2 previous customers filed new lawsuits after learning about the shoddy work Craig had done on their projects. Mike Torres was having his own problems. The state contractor's licensing board received an anonymous complaint about his use of unlicensed workers. When they investigated, they found that Mike had been paying workers off the books to avoid taxes and insurance requirements. Mike's business was shut down immediately. His license was revoked. The state also fined him $50,000 and referred his case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. "This can't be a coincidence," Mike told Craig on the phone. "Someone's targeting us." "Of course someone's targeting us," Craig replied angrily. "It's that Thompson guy. He's trying to destroy us because we put his wife in her place." "Maybe we should back off," Mike suggested. "This is getting out of control." "No way," Craig said. "Nobody threatens me and gets away with it." But Craig's troubles were just beginning. On Thursday morning, his biggest customer canceled a $100,000 contract after reading about his problems in the local business journal. 2 employees quit because they were worried about getting paid. His bank called his business loan due immediately. Jerry Walsh was facing his own crisis. His bank's internal audit department had received an anonymous report about suspicious loan approvals. When they investigated, they found a pattern of loans to unqualified borrowers who all lived in Willowbrook Estates. The bank's president called Jerry into his office. "Can you explain why you approved a mortgage for someone with a credit score of 480 and no verifiable income?" Jerry tried to explain, but the evidence was overwhelming. He had approved 17 loans over the past 3 years that should never have been approved. All 17 borrowers had received favorable treatment from the HOA board. "This looks like bribery," the bank president said. "We're terminating your employment immediately and referring this to federal banking regulators." Jerry lost his job on Friday. By Monday, federal investigators were interviewing him about potential bank fraud charges. Janet Whitmore watched her allies fall one by one and knew she was next. She tried to cover her tracks by shredding documents and deleting computer files, but Marcus had anticipated this. On Tuesday morning, the state attorney general's office received a package containing copies of 3 years of HOA financial records. The records showed exactly how Janet had been steering contracts to her family members and overcharging the HOA for services. The package also contained copies of real estate transactions, showing Janet's insider trading scheme. She had made over $200,000 in profits by using her HOA position to manipulate property values. By Wednesday, state investigators were at Janet's house with a search warrant. They seized her computer, her files, and her bank records. They also froze her personal accounts pending investigation. "Mrs. Whitmore," the lead investigator said, "you're looking at charges of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. We strongly suggest you hire a lawyer." The local newspaper picked up the story on Thursday. The headline read, "HOA Board Accused of Corruption, Assault." The article included interviews with several homeowners who described years of harassment and illegal fines. Marcus's favorite quote came from Bill Henderson. "These people turned our neighborhood into a police state. They made everyone afraid to plant flowers or park their cars in their own driveways. I'm glad someone finally stood up to them." By Friday, all 4 board members had resigned from the HOA. Craig Sullivan's business was bankrupt. Mike Torres was facing criminal charges. Jerry Walsh was unemployed and under federal investigation, and Janet Whitmore was hiring criminal defense lawyers with the money she had left. But Marcus wasn't satisfied yet. These people had put Sarah in the hospital. They had terrorized innocent families for years. Losing their jobs and facing legal problems wasn't enough punishment for what they had done. Saturday morning, Marcus made 4 phone calls. The first call was to Craig Sullivan's biggest competitor, a construction company called Apex Builders. Marcus had done research on Apex's owner, Tom Martinez, and learned that Tom had been trying to get some of Craig's contracts for months. "Mr. Martinez," Marcus said, "I have information about Sullivan Brothers Construction that might interest you." Marcus told Tom about Craig's financial problems, his pending lawsuits, and his suspended license. He also mentioned that several of Craig's customers were looking for a new contractor to finish their jobs. "I'll send you a list of those customers," Marcus offered. "If you contact them this week, you might be able to pick up some good contracts." The second call was to Mike Torres's biggest customer, a property management company that hired Mike to do maintenance work on apartment complexes. "I thought you should know that Torres Contracting just had their license revoked," Marcus told the property manager. "You might want to find a replacement contractor before your current jobs get shut down by the city." The third call was to a mortgage broker who competed with Jerry Walsh's bank. Jerry Walsh just got fired for approving bad loans, Marcus explained. His customers are going to need a new lender. "I can give you a list of people who might be interested in refinancing." The fourth call was to a property management company that specialized in running homeowner associations. Willowbrook Estates just lost their entire board to corruption scandals, Marcus said. "They're going to need professional management until they can elect new board members. Are you interested in the contract?" By Sunday evening, Marcus had effectively destroyed all 4 board members' ability to make a living in their current fields. Craig would never get another construction contract in town. Mike's contracting business was finished. Jerry would never work in banking again. Janet faced years of legal bills and possible prison time. More importantly, Marcus had made sure their customers and business connections knew exactly why these people had failed. Word would spread throughout the business community. These four would be marked as untrustworthy, corrupt, and dangerous to work with. Sarah was recovering well from her injuries. The swelling around her eye had gone down and her nose was healing properly. But she still had nightmares about the attack. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked Marcus as they sat on their front porch Sunday evening. Marcus looked around their quiet neighborhood. For the first time in months, no one was watching their house or looking for violations. The harassment had stopped completely. "The board members are finished," Marcus said. "But we need to make sure this never happens again." Marcus was right to be cautious. Craig Sullivan was broke and facing criminal charges, but he was also angry and desperate. Desperate people sometimes do dangerous things. And Craig Sullivan was about to prove just how dangerous a desperate man could be. Within 2 weeks of the board's collapse, the entire neighborhood had changed. The new temporary management company removed most of the ridiculous rules that had made life miserable for residents. People were planting gardens, flying flags, and parking their cars, without fear of violation notices. Marcus organized a special meeting to elect a new board of homeowners who actually lived in the neighborhood and cared about their neighbors instead of power and money. Bill Henderson was elected president. Mrs. Chen became treasurer. 3 other fair-minded residents joined them. "Our first order of business is to refund all the illegal fines that were collected over the past 3 years," Bill announced at their first meeting. "We're also implementing new rules to prevent any future board from abusing their authority." Marcus was satisfied with the changes, but he kept watching the situation carefully. In his army experience, defeated enemies sometimes tried to regroup and counterattack when they thought no one was paying attention. He was right to be careful. Craig Sullivan had lost everything. His construction business was bankrupt. His contractor's license was revoked. The IRS had seized his bank accounts to pay back taxes. His wife had filed for divorce and taken their 2 children to live with her mother in another state. Craig blamed Marcus for all of it. In his mind, none of this was his fault. He convinced himself that if Marcus had just followed the rules and kept his mouth shut, everything would have been fine. Craig started drinking heavily and spending his days at a bar called Murphy's Tavern on the rough side of town. He told anyone who would listen about how a troublemaker had destroyed his life. Most people ignored him, but a few listened with interest. Murphy's Tavern was where men went when they had nowhere else to go. Some were criminals hiding from the law. Others were just angry at the world and looking for someone to blame. Craig fit right in. "I know where this Thompson guy lives," Craig told his drinking buddies one evening. "He thinks he's so smart, but he made a big mistake. He left me with nothing to lose." "What are you going to do about it?" asked a man named Rex who had prison tattoos on his arms and scars on his knuckles. "I'm going to make him pay," Craig said. "Him and his wife both," Rex smiled. "I like a man with a plan. What kind of help do you need?" Meanwhile, Marcus had no idea that Craig was planning revenge. He was focused on helping Sarah recover from her injuries and getting their life back to normal. Sarah had returned to work at the hospital, but she was still nervous about being alone at home. Marcus installed new security cameras around their house and made sure all the doors and windows had strong locks. "I know I'm being paranoid," Sarah said one evening, "but I keep feeling like someone's watching me." Marcus looked out their front window at the quiet street. "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, call me immediately." The attack came on a Thursday night in November. Marcus was working late at a job site across town, trying to finish a repair before the weekend. Sarah was home alone, reading a book in the living room. At 9:30 p.m., someone threw a brick through their front window. The glass shattered and the brick landed on the coffee table next to where Sarah was sitting. Sarah screamed and ran to the kitchen to call 911. But before she could dial, she heard voices outside. "Come on out, Mrs. Thompson," Craig Sullivan shouted from the front yard. "We need to finish our conversation from last time." Sarah looked out the kitchen window and saw Craig standing on their lawn with 2 other men she didn't recognize. One of them was carrying a baseball bat. The other had something that looked like a crowbar. "We know your husband isn't home," Craig called out. "His truck isn't in the driveway. So it's just us and you." Sarah's hands shook as she dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" "3 men are outside my house," Sarah whispered. "They threw a brick through my window and they're threatening me." "What's your address?" Sarah gave the address and begged the dispatcher to send police quickly. "Officers are on the way," the dispatcher said. "Stay on the line with me." Outside, the men were getting bolder. They walked up to the house and started looking in windows. "I see you in there," one of them yelled. "You can't hide forever." Craig picked up another brick from the landscaping and threw it through the living room window. Then he and his friend started walking around the house looking for a way to get inside. Sarah ran upstairs to the bedroom and locked the door. She called Marcus while still staying on the line with 911. "Marcus," she whispered when he answered. "They're back. Craig Sullivan and 2 other men. They broke our windows and they're trying to get in the house." Marcus's blood went cold. "Where are you?" "Upstairs bedroom with the door locked. I called 911, but they're not here yet. I'm on my way. Stay on the phone with 911 and don't open the door for anyone except the police." Marcus hung up and called his neighbor Bill Henderson while driving as fast as he dared toward home. "Bill, Craig Sullivan is at my house threatening Sarah. Can you get over there until the police arrive?" "I'm already in my car," Bill said. "I heard the windows breaking." Downstairs, Craig and his friends had found an unlocked back door. They were inside the house now, breaking things and looking for Sarah. "Come down here," Craig shouted. "We just want to talk." Sarah heard footsteps on the stairs. Someone was coming up to the second floor. "Found her," one of the men yelled. The bedroom door rattled as someone tried to open it. When it didn't open, they started kicking it. The door frame began to crack. Sarah was trapped. There was nowhere else to go. Just then, she heard sirens in the distance. The police were finally coming. "Police!" Craig hissed to his friends. "We need to get out of here." The kicking stopped. Sarah heard footsteps running back down the stairs and out the back door. 2 police cars arrived at the same time Marcus did. Bill Henderson was already in the front yard, holding a golf club and looking around for the intruders. They went out the back, Bill told the officers. 3 men. One of them was Craig Sullivan. Marcus ran into the house and found Sarah sitting on the bedroom floor, crying and shaking. He held her tightly while police officers searched the house and took pictures of the damage. The men had trashed the living room, broken dishes in the kitchen, and spray-painted threats on the walls. One message said, "Mind your own business." Another said, "This isn't over." Detective Santos arrived 20 minutes later. She looked at the damage and shook her head. "Craig Sullivan is making this personal," she said. "Breaking and entering, vandalism, threatening behavior. This time he's looking at serious prison time." "Can you find him?" Marcus asked. "We'll find him. Men like Craig usually aren't smart enough to stay hidden for long." Detective Santos was right. Police found Craig and his 2 friends at Murphy's Tavern 3 hours later. All 3 were drunk and bragging about what they had done to Marcus's house. Craig was charged with breaking and entering, vandalism, making terroristic threats, and violating his probation from the assault case. His 2 friends were charged as accomplices. This time there would be no probation. Craig was facing 5 to 10 years in prison. But as Marcus cleaned up the damage to his house, he realized something important. Craig's attack had backfired completely. Instead of scaring Sarah and Marcus into leaving the neighborhood, the attack had brought the entire community together. Neighbors who barely knew each other were showing up to help clean and repair. Someone started a collection to replace the broken windows. Others brought food and offered places to stay. "We're not going to let bullies destroy our neighborhood," Mrs. Chen said as she helped Sarah sweep up broken glass. "This is what a real community looks like," Bill Henderson added. "People taking care of each other." Craig Sullivan had spent years trying to control the neighborhood through fear and intimidation. But his final desperate attack had accomplished something he never intended. It had made Willowbrook Estates into the kind of place Marcus and Sarah had always wanted to live. A place where neighbors looked out for each other instead of looking for reasons to complain about each other. The war was finally over, and the good guys had won. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his backyard watching Sarah plant tomatoes in their vegetable garden. The garden was much bigger now, extending well beyond the old approved boundaries that had once caused them so much trouble. Sarah looked healthy and happy again. The bruises had healed completely, and she had stopped having nightmares about the attacks. She was even talking about having children soon. "The soil is perfect here," she said, patting dirt around a tomato plant. "We're going to have more vegetables than we can eat." "We'll share them with the neighbors," Marcus replied. "Mrs. Chen has been asking about getting some of your tomatoes for her salsa." The transformation of Willowbrook Estates had been remarkable. Under the new board's leadership, the neighborhood had become what it was supposed to be all along. A community where people enjoyed living. The ridiculous rules were gone. Families could park their cars in their own driveways without fear. Children played in front yards without worrying about noise complaints. People flew American flags, planted colorful gardens, and painted their houses whatever colors they liked. Most importantly, neighbors talked to each other now. Instead of looking for violations to report, people looked for ways to help. When the Martinez family's roof was damaged in a storm, half the neighborhood showed up to help with repairs. When elderly Mr. Peterson got sick, neighbors took turns bringing him meals and checking on him. The legal consequences for the old board members had been severe but fair. Craig Sullivan was sentenced to 7 years in prison for the break-in and assault charges. Mike Torres received 3 years probation and had to pay back money he had stolen from customers. Jerry Walsh was banned from the banking industry for life and paid heavy fines to federal regulators. Janet Whitmore faced the most serious charges. She was convicted of embezzling over $300,000 from the HOA over 5 years. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution to the homeowners. These defendants used their positions of trust to terrorize and steal from their neighbors. The judge said at sentencing, their actions were not only illegal but morally reprehensible. I hope this sentence sends a message that HOA board members are not above the law. The homeowners got their money back. The new board used the recovered funds to improve the neighborhood in ways that actually mattered. They repaved roads, upgraded the community pool, and installed better street lighting for safety. Marcus had become something of a legend in the neighborhood. People called him the man who took down the corrupt board. But Marcus was uncomfortable with the attention. I just did what anyone would do to protect their family, he told Bill Henderson one evening. No, Bill replied. Most people would have just moved away. You stayed and fought. You saved this neighborhood. The story had attracted attention beyond Willowbrook Estates. Local newspapers wrote articles about HOA reform. The state legislature passed new laws making it harder for HOA boards to abuse their power. Marcus was invited to speak at community meetings in other neighborhoods facing similar problems. The most important thing to remember is that you have rights, Marcus would tell these groups. HOA boards work for you, not the other way around. Don't be afraid to demand they follow their own rules and state law. Marcus also started a website called HOA Justice, where homeowners could share their experiences and get advice about dealing with problem boards. Within a year, the website had thousands of members from across the country. Sarah was proud of what Marcus had accomplished, but she was even more proud of how he had done it. You could have handled this with violence, she said one evening as they sat on their front porch. A lot of men would have, but you used your brain instead of your fists. You won the right way. Marcus thought about that. The Army taught me how to fight wars, but it also taught me that the best victories are the ones where nobody has to die. The phone rang inside the house. It was Detective Santos with news about Craig Sullivan. He's up for parole review next month, she told Marcus. They asked if you wanted to make a statement. What do you think I should say? That's up to you. But for what it's worth, I think Craig Sullivan learned his lesson. 7 years in prison changes a man. Marcus considered this. He could oppose Craig's parole and probably keep him in prison for several more years. Part of him wanted to do exactly that. Craig had put Sarah in the hospital and terrorized their entire neighborhood. But Marcus also believed in second chances. If Craig had truly changed, maybe it was time to let him try to rebuild his life. I won't oppose the parole, Marcus told Detective Santos, but I want a restraining order that keeps him away from our neighborhood. That's fair, she agreed. And Marcus, what you did was the right thing, not just fighting back, but knowing when to stop fighting. A year after the trials ended, Marcus received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Craig Sullivan. The letter was handwritten and brief. Mr. Thompson, I know you have no reason to believe me, but I want you to know that I'm sorry for what I did to you and your wife. Prison gave me time to think about the man I became and the things I did wrong. I was angry and drunk and stupid, but that's no excuse for hurting innocent people. I'm getting out next month and moving to another state to start over. I won't bother you or your family ever again. I just wanted you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. It was mine. Thank you for not fighting my parole. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful for your mercy. Craig Sullivan. Marcus showed the letter to Sarah. She read it twice, then handed it back. Do you believe him? She asked. I think so. Prison changes people sometimes for the better. Are you glad you didn't oppose his parole? Marcus nodded. Revenge feels good for a while, but mercy lasts forever. 2 years after the whole ordeal began, Marcus and Sarah welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Hope. She was born on a sunny spring morning while the neighborhood children were playing in the street outside the hospital. When they brought Hope home from the hospital, they found their front yard decorated with balloons and welcome signs. Mrs. Chen had organized a neighborhood baby shower. Bill Henderson had built a beautiful wooden cradle as a gift. "This is what we always dreamed of," Sarah said as she rocked Hope in the new cradle. "A safe neighborhood where our children can grow up happy." Marcus looked out the window at their peaceful street. Children rode bicycles. Neighbors worked in their gardens. American flags flew proudly from several houses. "The dream came true," he said. "It just took a fight to get here," Sarah smiled. "Was it worth it?" Marcus looked at his wife and daughter, then at the community they had helped create, a place where people looked out for each other instead of looking for reasons to complain, a place where families could live without fear of petty tyrants and corrupt bullies. "Every bit of it," he said. Outside, the sun was setting over Willowbrook Estates, for the first time since they had moved there. Marcus and Sarah could watch the sunset without worrying about violation notices, harassment, or threats. They had fought for their home, their neighbors, and their right to live in peace. They had won the war without losing their souls, and they had proven something that Marcus's old commanding officer used to say: "The strongest weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's a good person who refuses to give up." In the end, that had made all the difference.